Hello, welcome to Harry and Eusty's Coracle Half Hour. Tonight's film is all about Eusty and shows him making a coracle.
It has been in the family. Several paper writers write in and said it's been in the family 350 years. What I do know is that my great-grandfather was making coracles here. I can remember my grandfather. He died 1924, he was making them here. And my father could remember his grandfather making them here, which is going back some time. Procedure is soaking the splits. I like them to soak at least 24 hours. A bit longer if possible, but at least 24 hours. The next procedure is rearing it quick while the splints are wet. I get the frame on the hoop, and then I bring the hoop up gradually all the way around, regulating it all the way around, and then when it's finally to the height that I want it, which is the height of those legs that I put under it, which we term as stocks, then that is the height I require it. So I fasten it on top of those stocks. I have about 8 or 10 cords around it. The cord is stopping it going any higher. The stock is stopping it coming down any lower. So it's more or less fixed at that particular height. It can't go up, it can't go down. My family in particular, and many more families, this was going on most rivers in the country. They were used by men net fishing and Another method was, which was known as line laying for eels. And families, none more so than my own, were getting part of a living at this particular game. And this, as I say, was going on wherever there was a river. Men were getting a living or part of a living off that water with the aid of a coracle. See, this was a type of fishing that you needed a coracle to carry out. See, the men at Iron Bridge, they would carry their coracles maybe 12, 14, or almost 20 miles up Severn, and then fish coming down, see, bringing their stuff home. Now, at times, they would have to go down below to give the upper reaches a rest, see, because they were fishing daily, and they had to go down below to give the upper reaches a rest. But they never liked it. It was only when they got to they would go downstream, because they had got to carry their coracles back, maybe 8 or 10 miles, their catch, their wet nets, and, you know, it was quite a job. Whereas when they went uphill and fished with the water, then it was bringing them home. They'd only got to carry their catch and their nets from here to the river, which is only less than 50 yards. The only two timbers I have seen used has been ash and elm, but we very much prefer ash. Ash is a very pliable wood and good lasting. When you inquire, you say, now I want some 8-foot strips, straight grain and free from when I was referring to the net fishing days, they stopped this. They brought an act in, I think round about 1925 or 26, that made net fishing illegal. And due to this, the coracle began to diminish then. See, it became that there was very little use for it. And my family kept the coracle going, due to the fact that we were always catching driftwood with a coracle. You know, you paddle to it, fasten your rope to the driftwood, and then paddle back to the side, and you can land huge pieces of timber. And then my father, being a rabbit catcher all his life, when Severn rose, it would be half a mile wide. Just up here, 2 miles up, Severn would be half a mile wide, and it had got the rabbits marooned on any high piece of land or any edge rows. The rabbits would be waiting there. My dad always said, he said, they're waiting there with tears in their eyes for me to come and rescue them. This was his saying. And he would come back with his coracle full of rabbits. You'd only just got to pick them out of the edges. And this is why the family kept the coracle going, because it was still an asset to us. You paint it in the skeleton form, get everything ready, and then you calico on. Although you put in a square piece of cloth on something that is more or less oval, I find out by a bit of patience on regulation all the way around. You can put it on with just small creases. See, but years ago it wouldn't go to those lengths. They didn't want it to look pretty at all. As long as it would float, it was as good as a Queen Mary to them. As I say, it was something that I had got to accept. Many times a person has been talking to my father and said, anyone to carry it on, Harry? And he would look around if I was in sight. I've heard him say many times, oh, I'm up there. Never asked me. I had to accept it. But it's something deep down I've been very grateful for. It's enabled me to meet many nice people, and this must have been something unknowingly that I like doing. It's no longer the thing that I knew it in my early days, the coracle. It was a means, as I say, of a man getting and living, say. Now, years ago, we had got, Iron Bridge was renowned for the poachers. And when I say poachers, I mean not men like today poaching. These were real ardent criminals. The one man had done 21 years in jail. A man has lived with my grandfather, old Naki, he'd done 13 years in jail at different stretches, but amounting to this length of time, as I have said. And they were so stayed in this way of life. They would have 5 years in jail, and this type of poaching was 99% of it was done at night. See, with the use of nets in the hours of darkness. And I've heard my father say when a man had done 5 years or 7 years, when he came out of jail, he'd be off the very first night as he came out, he'd be off again. After doing, it was no deterrent to him. Now the coracle came into this. They would be poaching. There was 15 of them here at one time. And these men did nothing else. They wouldn't have had a job. You know, if you would have offered them a good job in those days, they wouldn't have had it. They had got this freedom to go when and where they liked, at a risk always of being imprisoned, of course. But there was 15 at one time. Now there might be 5 or 6 or perhaps more of them night, and they would be, it's amazing the miles they would go. They would go 15, 20 miles across the country and through woods, across the fields and through woods, and they may be 5 or 6 miles from Severn, but they would make a beeline. Once they had finished, they would make a beeline for Severn, and during the day one of these men had carried a coracle up the side of the river to a given point, and then they would make to that point as soon as they'd finished netting. Might be 3 o'clock in the morning. They'd make to there, load the coracle up, and my grandfather would bring their catch home, and he was the ringleader of these poachers at this time, and the other men would walk home. They hadn't got anything, and the police would pull them up, but they'd got nothing, because the police concentrated on the poacher in the years that I refer to. When he came to Iron Bridge, he knew what his job was, to haunt the poacher, and he knew the poacher's habits. He knew when it was a good night that the poacher would be out. He knew where he lived, and he knew where to wait for him when he come back again, say. To satisfy myself and give the coracle a longer life, I put 2 coats on. It's added cost, I know, but I feel better about it. What I would really like to do is put the 2 coats of calico on and then tar it, which I have done. But I found out that the tar will not impregnate 2 thicknesses of calico. So I have to put 1 thickness of calico on, tar that. It will go through one easily enough. Put another thickness of calico on, and then tar it again. And then follow up, this is neat tar, and then follow up with 2 coats of tar containing pitch. This has stemmed, I think, from the barge days. See, Severn was very, very busy with river traffic, and bargemen were always known as a real tough breed. They had got these coracles on the barges with them, I'm given to understand, and then when the barge is finished, about 1890, and I think that these were some of these same men that carried on this tradition, really living on the river, you know, to a lesser degree, but with the aid of the coracle, these men couldn't have lived without the coracle, or not lived so well, because they were poaching off the land, they were stealing off the land. They'd have anything that was grown up the side of the river, potatoes, didn't matter what it was, and they'd get it home by coracle. The coracle, wherever you go with it, it always creates an interest. You know, people are always interested to see the coracle. When they come to Iron Bridge, it's something they want to see. I've been pleased to be a part of it. Many times, when I say many times, goodness knows how many times young students have come here and they've been going to do a thesis on coracles or on light craft. Can I help them? And their first reaction is they'll say, we've been to the library and we can't find anything. Because I think, I don't know whether I'm right in thinking this, because it belonged to this breed of men that were the wrong side of the law. There was never anything written of. They were men that couldn't read or write to begin with. My grandfather, the best of them ever, he couldn't read or write. And as I say, whatever they were doing had got to be kept quiet. I don't want the coracle to die out. The coracle has been so good to us, or we made it that way. This is why the family kept the coracle going, because it was still an asset to us. But at the same time, deep down, I'm very, very pleased that it is still going. And I'm more pleased it's been my own family that has done this.
That's all for this evening. We do hope you have a pleasant one. Good night.